Welcome, everybody. We'll call to order the May 20th meeting of the Paulding County Airport Authority. Hope everyone is doing well and healthy. Dave, if you would do us the honor of the invocation, that would be great.
Psalm, be thankful together. Heavenly Father, we do bow humbly before you, just rejoicing in the day, thanking you for new life in the springtime and just the magnitude and glory of your creation. Thanks for all members of this board and all the attendees here that take interest in this airport and in our community and in our county. We're just amazed that you would listen to our prayers and hear our prayers, and so we would pray without ceasing as we go through each day and try to make decisions that would be in line with your wisdom and your glory and your honor. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dave. Next up is the approval of the meeting minutes for the May 6th called meeting. Everybody should have a copy of those minutes. Are there any questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are in the record. Terry?
Yes, sir.
Would you do the honors and give us your report?
We have a podium, so I'll use it. First thing I want to say is thank y'all, everyone in the public for being understanding and patient as we have worked through, just like everyone else in the nation and the world has through this coronavirus time. We have improvised, and I think we have survived and done quite well. We are meeting the 6-foot requirements for separation. This building has been closed to the public, just like the Watson building had been, up until, I believe, this past Monday was when y'all opened, which is when we officially reopened our building. So we have been following the guidelines of the county as basically our governing decision-making for how we have handled traffic in and out of this building. We have maintained an open airport. We have kept the terminal open for flyers when necessary, so if someone is flying in, we could get them in. They can use the restroom, buy their fuel, those kinds of things. So the airport has officially been open and operational, but like every airport in America, our operations have been down. We don't have an exact measurement, but anecdotally, I would say 50% or more. And the type of traffic that has been down is the money-making kind of traffic. That's been Walmart, Home Depot, Dollar General, the Canadian Railroad, all of the folks who come through with corporate traffic, buy significant amounts of fuel and use rental cars and hotels and those kind of things. That traffic has been almost non-existent for the past 30 days. We have seen a couple of corporate flyers in the past 48 hours, so we're seeing it now come back to life. And so the financial impact to us is reduced fuel sales and zero rentals for this facility, as we've talked about in the past. So y'all know we had a called meeting about 10 days ago, and we approved, and then on that following Monday, our co-sponsor, the Board of Commissioners, approved receipt of the CARES Act stimulus funding for airports. This is the airport version of the $1,200 check that individuals receive from the federal government to stimulate the economy, keep things going as we collectively as a nation work through the economic impacts of this. Our share of that funding, as you know, was $30K. Georgia is a block grant state, which means that funding for the non-commercial airports, of which there are about 100 in the state of Georgia, is handled by Georgia DOT. That money has now moved from the FAA to Georgia DOT, and with both us and our co-sponsor, the Board of Commissioners, approving the resolutions to accept that money, we are now prepared to accept it as soon as it's offered by DOT, which they have told me to be ready this week. So we're basically in an any day now status to receive that. We've done everything we need to do. We are ready now to make that happen. Dave, and Dave, y'all will be receiving electronic signature documents. Yolanda will be helping you through that. They will need to be witnessed and notarized and all of those kind of things. This is the normal grant process, and that's why we have to approve it in a public meeting. And we have already determined how we're going to spend the money. It's going to be used to pay operational accounts. In other words, we're going to use it for salaries and light bills and those kind of things, as opposed to building something new at the airport. The CARES Act was kind of interesting. It actually read that funding can be used for any legal purpose for which money can be spent at an airport. So that gives airports the leeway to use it any way they see fit to help them get through this time. And for us, putting that in our operational budget is the right thing to do, and that's what we intend to do. So if there are any questions on that, feel free to ask me, or if not, I'll continue. The next topic is the environmental assessment for the release of the 2.9 acres. Y'all know that's been an ongoing full-time job of mine as we tried to work through this, quote, expedited process of the FAA to get this 2.9 acre site released. I received 54 comments on Rev D. The FAA continues to be very bureaucratic and very deliberate. We will publish Rev E, and 5 minutes before this meeting, I finished all of the comments, and I intend to get that back to Georgia DOT by lunchtime today. They typically take a couple of days to review it, and then it'll be back to Michael Feynman and the FAA for 54 more comments. So we will continue to press as hard as we can to get this document approved, and approved in a timely manner. Petting zoo. As you drove in the property, you're beginning to see some significant historical assets over there. About every weekend, the museum is moving more and more of their assets here as they have volunteers available to make those moves. Some of those vehicles are still operational and they can drive down the road and come on their own power. Some have to be trailered in, some will be flown in at appropriate times. But we're excited to see that happen. Randy and I have finished the fence around it. We've still got to install the personnel gate so that guests can get in and out of that, so that kids in particular will be able to go up and touch and feel these aviation assets and military assets of historical value without fear of them getting loose on the runway. It's one thing to contain a deer. It's an entirely another to try to contain a bunch of kids. I think I need a 20-foot high fence for that. But hopefully this is going to suffice, and we'll have a great experience for the people who are going to be enjoying that museum as it begins to open over the next 30 to 60 days. The 24-hour Pilots Lounge. I have spent considerable time this past week sharpening the pencil, refining the estimates, and I have determined that we are now less than $10,000 away from opening that Pilots Lounge, and we've got that money in the operational budget. That's within my discretionary spending, so I'm going to press full steam ahead, and I expect by another 30 days or less, that 24/7 Pilots Lounge is going to be up and operational, and that is huge for us.
I think you should take a couple seconds to talk about that, particularly so that people watching on the video can understand what that means for the airport. I'm not entirely sure we've made a good case for that. But
okay.
When I came out, I had questions. Carrie and you walked me through that, and that is going to be, in my opinion, a very good use of the money. So I think you should
Sure.
elaborate on that.
Sure. So for the 10 years, 11 years almost, that this airport has been in operation, when the FBO closes down at night, which typically is 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, this building is locked and every other building on the airfield is locked. So when someone flies in, they have no place to go to the bathroom, no place to go check weather, no place to go to plan their next phase of flight, no place to stretch their legs. Even though the airport is open 24/7, the facilities have always been closed once the FBO closes at night. Adding this 24/7 Pilots Lounge it's going to be, I think everyone by now knows that it's located in the end of the office building there at Hangar 1. So it's an easy walk, very short walk from our fuel pumps, self-service fuel pumps, which are also open 24/7. And what that does primarily is that opens us up to the nighttime private pilot training, which every private pilot, every student is required to fly a certain number of night hours, and they typically go to airports that have facilities for them to use, and we have not, we've not been in that mix. Carrollton is the place that probably has the best nighttime lounge. That's where I go at night when I'm doing night recurrency training, and that's where a lot of the folks around here go. But this is for primarily the light piston aircraft market, and it gives us an additional feature to offer to the airport, which makes us more attractive for training. And now that we've got a flight school here, they train at night, and their students have to fly a certain amount of night hours as they prepare for their exams. And so it's really critically important for us to step up to the plate and have this service for our flyers. Any questions about that?
Well, I think it's important that you guys talk about the offset. We'll have a revenue producing opportunity to sell more gas at night
That's
than
right.
we did before.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
people would have bypassed our airport and gone to Carrollton or gone to Cartersville or
Right, and
something.
they get the fuel.
And they get the fuel. And
Right.
we make a pretty good amount of money off of that fuel, so I think it's important to realize that there's a payback for this, not
That's right.
just this is not just an expense to add something to the.
Yeah, it is a revenue generating asset for the airport, for sure. The business center and the museum display area, we're $75,000 away from the finish line in probably 30 days after receipt of funding. So those of you who haven't seen the progress that we've made, if the last time you were over there, what you saw was a gravel dirt floor inside that unfinished ground floor office building, you're going to be very surprised when you see it now. We've got sheetrock in most of the building. All of the rough ends are done. We're really down to HVAC, ceilings, floors, and doors, and very, very close to the finish line on that. So we've made great progress on that. I want to talk a little bit about the tower. A couple of months ago, I addressed a proposed tower at Yorkville, and that tower is going to penetrate our Part 77 surface by 93 feet, which is a lot. That's significant. And so we've been digging into that to decide what is our position going to be on, are we going to fight that, or are we going to stand by and say that's okay in this particular instance. The Part 77 is a design criteria. It is not an absolute. The further you get away from the airfield, the more it becomes a design goal rather than an absolute, because we don't own or control the property outside the boundaries of our 770 acres of airport property right here around us. Obviously, if we're 10 feet on the other side of the runway, my spec there is 18 inches. That's why I've got guys out there cutting the grass almost every day during the summertime. And we have to keep that grass mowed, keep everything down low. But by the time you get 2.7 miles away in Yorkville, where this tower is proposed to be, that limit is about 200 feet. This tower is about a 290-foot tower. So it is sticking up pretty good in our proposed protected area. Paulding County has an airport overlay zone as part of county zoning ordinance, and that's how we protect and control our airspace. And what we have done is we've worked with GDOT, with the FAA, with Kerry in particular, as an active professional flyer, to look at the location of this tower, look at the impact that it may or may not have on our instrument procedures here, and the importance of this tower to the community. Now, when I had this discussion with you a month ago, I had no idea what the tower was for. All I knew is I've been notified that a tower was planning to be constructed in the Yorkville area. Here were the dimensions and so forth. What I have learned since then is this is a southern link project. This is part of Georgia Power and their modernization program, and it does actually impact our community from the standpoint of modernizing their ability to control and maintain the power grid and the communications network that Georgia Power operates. So it is important to us, and Carrie and I have determined that this has no impact, and that's been verified and validated by both the FAA and the airport designer at GDOT that we work with, Mr. Joseph Robinson. And so at this point, my recommendation is that we withdraw our concern for this and notify the Planning Commission, which ultimately will wind up on the Board of Commissioners' desk for approval, that we as an airport have no objection to this tower moving forward. Okay, that's going to be a big deal for the community, and we've got every right to object to this because, again, that is exactly why this zoning overlay was put in place. But I think we also have an obligation to the community to be reasonable about, is this really going to impact us or not? And because of the location, if this is the center line of the runway, Yorkville is located way off over here to the left, and it doesn't interfere with any of our approach and departure procedures into and out of this airport on a cloudy day. So with that, I intend to withdraw our objection to that, and I don't really need a vote, but I just need to know if anyone has a concern about that or needs more information about that before I notify both Georgia Power and the planning and zoning folks of Paulding County that we have no objection. So is everybody good with that? Carrie, you want to say something about
Yeah,
it?
you want to pass this around, Terry, if anyone wants to see exactly where the tower is, just to give a little more depiction on kind of where you're talking about.
Okay, so that's the tower?
Yes, sir. Yep.
So that's the picture right
Yep,
there?
that's right.
Okay.
So you can kind of see, as you look at the picture, you'll see, just imagine the runway center line being extended out for an approach path or a straight-in path to the runway. You'll see that the tower is offset to the left of the, or the right of the approach path to 1-3 or departure path to 3-1. So what we did is we looked at a 3-degree glide path to the runway, which is typical. So or 100 feet or 300 feet per nautical mile, and Terry and I plotted that out, and we just did a scenario of a long right base approach to 1-3, and you're even on a 3-degree glide path, you're well above the tower. So, and that's not a typical approach, but we were thinking worst case scenario, someone approaches the runway that way, which they can legally do in an uncontrolled field, but you're not only above the tower, but you're well beyond the FAA's definition of well clear, which is 500 feet. So you're missing that tower by 500 feet. So, and that's all the FAA. That's all the reg requires you to do. So I'm okay with it. I concur with Terry's recommendation to withdraw the objection.
Eric,
Yes, sir.
I guess my only issue here, and I don't have an issue with this particular one, but do we need to craft up or draft up something to put on record to make sure that, let's say we opening the door, and next time will we have to defend ourselves because we have approved this? Now, I'm in total agreement with this, but I'm looking down the road that we're
Right.
opening a door.
Right, so that door actually is already open because there are towers. As you go out the property, you'll see a tower that's almost as high as this one, located just to the left of Wolf Pen Path. It's practically right on top of us. And you have to look at these individually about where they are and what the impact is that they have. The tower over here is clearly well off the center line of the runway. So the further off the center line, the better. The further away from the airport, the better. The significance is we have an overlay, and that overlay has specific zoning requirements, and that was put in at the time the airport was built for this purpose. So in order for anyone to violate that zoning ordinance, they have to get a waiver. So that waiver requires the approval of the Board of Commissioners and the recommendation typically of your zoning board, your zoning authority. So our protection, our control, is the fact that we have this zoning ordinance, and any future tower is going to have to go through this same process. So a tower is by definition, published to the FAA about a year in advance, and they do all of the airspace studies, and then it trickles down to us as an airport as part of the zoning process, and we will have an opportunity to fight any future tower that might penetrate into our space. Clearly, if this were right beyond the ILS tower down here, you know, if we were talking about putting a big tower right on the center line of the runway, we would fight it, and we would prevail in that. And the fact that we have previously withdrawn an objection to a tower that has no operational impact to us, I don't think hurts us in that at all.
Kerry, do we have any issue with a larger plane in the future? I mean, if we were to extend the runway so that we could land a cargo plane on this field, is that, I mean, we're gonna have a future issue?
Not in that
Maybe
one.
consequence?
Not in that location, because the approach to the runway is standardized. The 30-degree glide path is standardized for any aircraft, no matter if it's a light aircraft or a heavy aircraft. So the approach path is standardized, and so as long as it's not within that 500-foot well-clear bubble, then you should never have a problem with it. So if it were to become a problem, then likely what that would mean was the operator of the aircraft was operating outside of FAR limits. So that's outside of our control. So if
Yeah,
they're operating
airplanes often, unfortunately, hit trees and towers and things at airports, but it's pilot error.
500 feet is the minimum altitude according to the regulations that you can operate over a sparsely populated area. So if you're below that, you're operating outside the rules anyway.
So in this particular case, the pilot would not only have to be too low, but he'd have to be in the wrong place. So you've
And there's
actually got double protection from pilot error in this particular instance, which is why I'm withdrawing my objection.
Did you mention, Terry, also that there's already a 220-foot tower there? Did you mention that? I mean,
It's not there. I'm talking about this one over here.
But in Yorkville, there's already a 220-foot tower almost in the same location.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's the Yorkville Water Tower, I think is one of them. So
Okay.
there's already obstacles
In that area.
just about co-located area. So,
Question.
Yes, sir.
Out of the three approaches we have here, we don't have four. We don't have a circle land.
We do.
we do have.
Okay.
GPS.
So
So the
GPS alpha.
alpha.
It comes in from the south.
all right, so are we TERPS 2012 or after? Prior or post?
Then I'd have to look up and see what our last TERPS criteria is.
Circling for that, the criteria for category D would be 2.3 nautical miles, so it's outside of 2.3. Category E would be military aircraft, which would be, forget using it here, or them coming to us. But if you do go to late 2012 and thereafter, category C, we're talking about 2.7, and we're calling that at 267 miles from
Yeah.
here?
But the circling minimum is not 200 feet. The circling minimum is higher than that.
Do you recall what it is?
I think it's 500 feet.
I don't know if it's that low. I'll
It's
get back to you.
higher than this tower.
Yeah, it's definitely
Because
higher
that
than
was
the tower.
evaluated by the FAA, and they determined it not to be an issue for the GPS alpha approach.
Yeah, my only concern would be as we grow, the category C stuff is the stuff that we fly, and that would.
It was, they did their analysis for all categories.
Okay.
So they looked at all categories, and for not only the airport as it exists today, but any planned future modifications, like the extending the runway, the extra 500 feet, that they take that into consideration when they do their analysis. It's called an operational assessment. It's very thorough.
So you 100% agree that we're future-proof by not opposing this?
I am 100% sure that we are future-proof as the airport is designed or planned today. Now, that doesn't say that somebody may not come out 20 years from now and say, I want a 2-mile runway. Well, that isn't planned, and that might then be affected by this tower. You can't protect and project for that kind of uncertainty. But as the airport layout plan, which is our master development plan, exists today for all current and what they call ultimate configurations of the airport, we're good. So that, basically, that's as protected as we can get. Last thing I'll say, if there's no more questions on that, You may wonder why there are no financials in front of you. It's because you approved them at the call meeting 10 days ago, and we haven't closed out another month, so there's nothing additional to review. So expect in June that you'll see another set of financials. And I know y'all missed those because they're so exciting to read. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to move into executive session to discuss personnel, litigation, and real estate.
We have a
Mr. Chairman,
second.
may I make this tax assessor's announcement before we entertain that motion?
Yep, how about if we hold on? Dan, go ahead, Dave.
Okay, I have here something that every property owner is going to receive here Friday or Monday. It's a tax notice, not a bill, but a notice of the property owned by, I'm not going to say the name of the company, but the Gulfstream 650 that uses our hangar and pays rent in the hangar. This is their tax notice, and the 100% assessed value is $41 million, this aircraft. And of course, just like our homes.
That's the 40% assessed value, or the 100%?
The 40% is $16,400,000.
Okay.
So that's what the millage rate is applied to for school M&O, county M&O, county bond, and county fire, which comes to their total tax bill, which will be due the same time ours are in September, is $494,115. And just to kind of put that in perspective, the average home value in this past assessment year in Paulding County, it'd be interesting to see what y'all would guess, but it's $229,000, the average home value. And so it takes 183 homes at the average value to equate one Gulfstream 650 airplane. And that's nothing to do with commercialization. All general aviation, privately owned airport, privately owned airplane that operates out of our airport.
Thank
But
you.
I think it's significant to elaborate on this, because as you're developing the plans and to be completely transparent, Kerry has dusted out the master plan for the airport, dusted it off that Terry put together, and I think it's going to be incumbent on this board to look at that master plan and begin to figure out how we can build infrastructure to house more of those airplanes. Because if we can put 3 or 4 more Hangar 1s up out here, and we can draw $500,000 per hangar in tax revenue a year, that sets our commercial tax digest, that sets it on fire. It moves it fast. And that's something that Paulding County needs in a desperate way. And this airport is primed to do that. We'll have to spend a little money to do it, but I think the payback long term will be well worth it. And I believe it's something that all the residents of the county can get behind when they understand why we want to spend that money and understand that the commercialization part of the equation is not on the table. Agreed?
Yeah.
And just to be clear, that money doesn't come to the airport. That money that's ad valorem tax, which stays with the county tax digest. So 2/3 of that goes to the school system. And that G650 has no kids. 183 homes?
Correct.
So I assume that's almost like adding another elementary school, depending on how many kids.
420 kids at an average of 2.3 kids per home. So it's,
So you're getting close to, if you added another 183 homes, you just about have to add another elementary school. So this is a big deal.
no cars were put on the highway.
Well, one, the pilot, he comes in twice a week.
Thanks for sharing that, Dave.
We have a motion. Do we have a second to enter closed session?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And Terry, we will do this downstairs.
Yeah, we're gonna go downstairs, the public's free to stay here, and we'll be back in the finish.
Call the meeting back to order. Executive session. No actions taken during the executive session except for taken to approve the executive session meeting minutes. We'll move on to open discussion on the strategic plan. I believe you all got a copy of that this morning. Any questions, comments, concerns? Terry?
I'll open it up, and then Terry's can, he'll have some input on this, but basically, just the background. Last year, we had needed arisen a need for some type of a strategic plan so we could all, kind of begin to unify our direction and our efforts and focus help their airport director focus where the board wishes for them to put the emphasis. So there's a couple of us, Dave, Stacy, myself, and Dave Carmichael, David Smallbean. We put some work into this via a draft document and a lot of good information that Terry had put out first for us to look at. So we worked on this, went back and forth a couple times with it, and for whatever reason, like the email I sent out, I'll take the responsibility for that not getting pushed back out. It got overrun by events with several other things we were working at the time, and unfortunately, we didn't get it back in front of the board to be reviewed. Since that time, we've had several new members, and so in discussions with a couple of you individually, there's been requests to get this document back out there to the forefront so that the board can now currently look at it, in hopes of not only helping to unify the vector for the board, but also significantly help Terry with knowing what is our priorities moving forward so that he can focus his tireless efforts. So what you have in front of you in hard copy and also in email is you have that draft that has also been looked at by a couple of members and updated, so it should be fairly current now, if not very current, as far as what we are suggesting, if you will, where our efforts should be in the development of the general aviation of our general aviation airport. So what we're gonna ask, and what I'm proposing is we take a 30-day comment period now from you all, let you take a look at it over the next 30 days, digest it, make comments. You can just ship those directly to me, and I'll place secretary on this one. Happy to do it. And then at the end of that 30-day comment period, we have a proposed final draft for our board to look at and adopt in hopes that we can, like I said, unification, consolidation of effort and focus, and hopefully ultimately, help us all help Terry. So Terry, does that sound,
That'd be great.
I know he's desperately asking for it, and I know several of us on the board individually wholeheartedly agree that it's high time. So does anybody have any questions on that proposed process?
So Kerry, what we've got here is we've got basic overview, and then it goes into detail.
Yeah, it does, and that's kind of how we did it. Terry provided a lot of background. So the background, and again, pay no attention to the format, if you would, just look at the content. But the background part of this, what you see, will not make it into the final document. I'm not proposing that all of that make it. It's just to give you an idea of where these go, how we arrived at these milestones. That's all that's for. So that would come out in the final document. So what you'll see in the proposed final draft, you'll just see the milestones themselves based on fiscal year. And Dave, that's kind of where we felt our small group, that would be the best way to do it. So.
And for the benefit of the board, it's given us the goal, the strategic plan, the technical plan, how we'll measure an outcome on it, and a cost if the cost is known for each goal.
So, just if you want, like I said, I'll be happy to take everyone's comments. Email is fine. Or if you have to use something verbally or something really, really short, text me and we can have a phone conversation about it. I'll try to consolidate those. I will kick, as the draft evolves, like to kind of kick it back and forth. I'd like to let, keep Terry, of course, heavily in the loop on exactly what is going on, if there's any changes. And then hopefully get some type of, like I said, proposed final draft back for our meeting in June to be looked at. So, sound about right, Jay?
Sounds great.
All right, so put it on the agenda for June,
Okay,
have further discussion and a vote.
I think that'd be good.
Very good. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Carrie. With that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.